Welcome to Golf Training Hacks. You know, when it comes to sports movement, if you don't start in a good position, it's not likely going to end up in a good position. And that's especially true when the movement is a high force, high velocity movement. And that's the golf swing, right? It's a high velocity movement with a lot of force on it. So if we don't start in a good position in our golf swing, it's really tough to change up on the fly and get back to impact with some consistency in a good position. So where do we start? So for a golfer, the starting point is address and the takeaway. So in this series, we're going to work on strengthening your one-piece takeaway. And where we're going to look first is to your hips. Because you have to have some hip mobility to begin this takeaway correctly. And what you need is hip internal rotation. Now this is hip internal rotation. So as you take that club back, you're putting some pressure on the inside of your rear foot. And this rear hip is going into hip internal rotation and extending backwards. Now you also have to have shoulder rotation. So what the takeaway will look like is, as we begin to draw this club back, this hip is going into internal rotation, there's pressure on the inside of the foot, and your shoulders rotate. Your thumbs are pointed out and down, not up and back. So your shoulders have rotated and your hip has gone into internal rotation. Unfortunately for a lot of golfers, their hips are stuck. They just don't have enough internal rotation. What happens then is that if you can't rotate into this hip, your hips will be too square to impact. That means your body has to compensate. Your body has to get some rotation somewhere. Unfortunately, a lot of times it gets that in the lower back, in the lumbar spine. Now your lumbar spine really isn't set up to rotate that much. It's your hips, your T-spine, and your shoulders. That's where you want to get the rotation. Also what happens is if you're stuck too square to the impact point, the other compensations will be using your elbow to get this club back and then setting your wrist too early. So it ends up looking something like this instead of more like that. Now, if you're moving like this, it's really tough to get back to impact with any consistency. There's just too much variability in that movement. So to put it all together, how do you strengthen your takeaway? Well, you need improved hip mobility, hip internal rotation, and you need improved shoulder mobility. That means you need to have a T-spine that extends, you need to have a scapula that's working correctly, and you really need to get out of this stuck position, this upper cross syndrome position we always talk about, because it's really tough to rotate your shoulders when you're stuck like this. So in this video, we're going to start working on hip internal rotation. So let's get started. In this exercise video, we're going to work on putting strength into your takeaway. And as we said, the takeaway requires some hip internal rotation. So on the takeaway, this rear hip drives backwards, and we have hip internal rotation in the rear side hip. You're also putting force into the inside of your rear foot. We want nice wide hands. So as we take the club away, the hands are wide, the thumbs are pointed out, not up. We don't have early wrist set, the thumbs are pointed out, and we're going into hip internal rotation. So we have a nice wide takeaway, internal rotation in this hip, and we have force going into this ground. And we're going to do an exercise now that's going to help you work that position. So let's get started. To do this exercise, you need some type of a pulley. You can hook it up to something in your house. If you're at the gym, you can use whatever pulley system they have there, or you might have something at home like I have set up on this door. I'll demonstrate this from a head-on view without using a pulley. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up in your address position, which is hip hinge back, belt buckle to the ball, and you have your back in a neutral spine. Now a neutral spine is some extension in your lower back, some flexion in your upper back, and some extension in your neck. So I set up, hip hinge back, bent over a little bit, keeping that neutral stable spine. I'm going to grab the pulley. What I'm going to do is put force into the inside of my rear leg. I'm going to pull the pulley back, and as I'm rowing it back, I'm going to go into internal rotation and extend. So I'm always putting force into the inside of the rear foot. So you could do it that way, or you could row it, keep it here, and then go into your internal rotation this way. Putting force into the inside of your rear foot. Okay, so that's the way it looks from the front. I'm going to set up on the pulley, and we'll show it with a pulley. All right, so you set up in your address position, hip hinge back, belt buckle to the ball, neutral spine. And I'm going to pull and rotate. I'm going into extension and internal rotation while I'm putting force into the inside of my rear foot. Alternatively, you can do it with an isometric hold this way. Hip hinge back, belt buckle to the ball, neutral spine, row, and turn. And you're going to keep this pulley here in an isometric hold, an isometric row, and turn. So that's an easy way to put some force or load into an internally rotated rear hip, which is what you're going to need to get that takeaway in the right position. So in this video, we're going to work on getting some hip internal rotation. Now you need hip internal rotation throughout the golf swing, but in this particular video, we're going to be talking about working on it to strengthen your takeaway. So hip internal rotation is this, and that's what you need for your takeaway. So an easy way to start is do some nice easy rocking going from left to right. So you get onto the all-four position, you can rock back, and then rock into the right side. So I'm rocking into this side. Look down, you look up, and then you rock into that side. Now, if you can't go all the way back, go as far as you can. If that's all you can go, that's fine. You could go from the right side to the left side, rock down, rock to the right, or you could just go from one side to the other. It's a nice easy way to begin to get some movement in your hip capsule. In this video, I'll show you a way to get some nice easy movement in your hips. That way you can improve your hip internal rotation and overall hip mobility, and that's going to help your takeaway and it's going to help your golf swing in general. So you can get on all fours, okay, you can rock back, then you're going to reach to the side and rock into the one side. Come back and rock into this side. So I'm rocking into my right side. If you want, you could just keep your arm there and rock back. It's a nice stretch too for your back. Other side, reach and rock into the left. Now you could also just alternate. Ground-based movements are an excellent way to put some easy load into new positions. In this video, we're going to work directly on the hip capsule to improve your hip internal rotation. Now, as we said in this video series, to get a good position in the beginning of your golf swing is really important to finish that golf swing in a good position. And to get in that good position in your takeaway, you need hip internal rotation. So as we said, when we're kneeling down now, this is hip internal rotation. We're going to use this hip mobility drill or technique to work directly on the hip capsule. And we got this from the Ready State and Kelly Starrett. Now, if you want to learn about mobility, we highly recommend looking into the Ready State. It's a great website so full of information. It's wonderful. We've followed Kelly Starrett for years and years. He doesn't know us, but we know him, and we can't recommend that site more highly than we do. Okay, to perform this technique, get on all fours, and you're going to kick one side out. So this leg, this foot is going out that way, and now this hip is an internal rotation. What I'm going to do now is block this foot with this leg. Now the force is going into the ground. My knee is driving into the ground. So I'm not trying to sink back like that. I'm trying to drive the force into the ground, and I'm driving the force into the ground, and I'm turning into this position. Driving into the ground and turning into this position. So you will find that your hip is wound up when you're here. And all you're going to do is turn, just turn and drive your femur or your knee into the ground. So the force is going this way. I'm going to turn a little to the side so you can see this way. So the foot is kicked out. My shoulders are staying square to this mat, because if you go this way, you're going to lose the internal rotation. So my foot is kicked out, and I'm driving the force into the ground. So the force is going this way, and I'm pushing into the ground and turning into this. Okay, so that's a basic movement. If you want to make it a little more advanced, you can use isometric holds. Isometric holds are great to improve range of motion. So what I'm going to do now, instead of just holding that position, I'm going to kick my foot out, block this, and now I'm going to push this foot into that foot and hold it for, let's say, a 4-second count. I'm going to take a deep breath in. I'm going to push 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, and release with a breath through my nose. Now, doing that, you're going to get a little bit more range of motion. So once you do that, now you can drive the force into the ground and turn into that. And you can do this for several iterations, okay? So take a deep breath in, push isometrically for 4 seconds, 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, kick it out a little bit further, force going into the ground, and turn into your foot. I'll do it from the side. Kick the leg out, keep my shoulders square to the mat, block it, deep breath in through your nose, hold it and push for 4 seconds. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000. Find some new range. Force goes this way and turn into it. That's an excellent way to begin to get some hip internal rotation, so you can get that takeaway in the right position, because you want to start in the right position, because if you don't start an athletic movement in the right position, it's really tough to change on the fly and end in the right position. The golf swing is no different. It's a high velocity, high force rotation, really tough to change on the fly. So get that beginning right and get your hip right, and you'll be able to get back to impact with some consistency.